Are we on, Pam? We are on. Pam is engineering today. So she's getting in the flow of the program. Welcome everybody to another edition of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens. You can find my interviews, movie reviews in 146 different outlets, print and online in the U.S. and abroad. But every Monday, you can find me right here at 11 o'clock Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, live on Adrenaline Radio, where we go behind the lens and below the line with filmmaking, even some music, stage, and I guess that's it for now. Who knows what we'll come up with in the future. So, first of all of you Star Wars fans who tune in every week for Brian's Star Wars Countdown, Brian is not here today, which is why the lovely Pam is here. Brian is off goofing off doing something. Who knows what? I guess we'll find out next week. But we've got a great show today. We've been on a roll the past few weeks with some really exciting guests in studio and calling in. Today I'm here in studio alone, but calling in one of my favorite effing friend filmmakers, Quincy Rose. Those regular BTL listeners will remember Quincy has been on before with his first feature film, Miles to Go. And we teased his second film that was just setting out on the festival circuit, Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends. And that is exactly what that film is, Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends. It is hilarious. It is so much fun. And I'm thrilled to have Quincy back to talk about the film because now it's not just on the festival circuit. The film is available for everybody to get now, and Quincy's going to be able to tell you all about it, and we're going to talk about the journey of Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends. I just like saying that because I think it's fun. And I have great love for this film, not only because of Quincy, but one of the stars of the film, Taylor Dawson, is also one of the lead actors in this little film called Bunker that I was one of the executive producers on, along with Molly Elfman, and written and directed by Ned Airbar. So I'm thrilled to be talking about this film. And also in Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends is Graham Skipper, who is in a really creative new horror film that's currently on the fest circuit, Beyond the Gates. Anybody out there that loves horror, if a festival is coming near you and Behind the Gates is there, see it. I can't recommend that highly enough. And it also stars, our friend Barbara Crampton, who has become a horror icon in her own right. And speaking of horror icons, at 11:30 today, at the half-hour mark, we have the wonderful co-writer and director of Phantasm Ravager, David Hartman. Last week, Don Coscarelli was with us, the godfather, the guru, the creator of the Phantasm franchise. Well, for Ravager, the fifth and final film in the franchise, or maybe not. For those of you that see the film, you'll understand why I say that. Don passed the directing reins off to David Hartman. So David essentially makes his feature debut here directing Phantasm Ravager. And we're going to talk to David all about that. David comes out of the animation world. He has done amazing work. Transformers, Robots in Disguise, the Astro Boy reboot in 2003. He did an animated sequence for Don Coscarelli's John Dies at the End a few years ago. And, of course, my favorite work that David has done up until now, directing and animating My Friends Tigger and Pooh. Okay? You cannot go wrong with Tigger and Winnie the Pooh. So we're going to hear from David how you go from Tigger and Winnie the Pooh to Phantasm Ravager and Spheric Balls and The Tall Man. But before all of this fun stuff starts happening, we're going to take a short break, and you're going to hear all about Vidiots and their new Indiegogo campaign. And we are back again. And folks, I can't encourage you enough to get involved with Vidiots. It is a store, it is a foundation and a store that is very dear to my heart, thanks in large part to the wonderful Maggie McKay. Maggie and I have known each other a number of years through Film Independent. Maggie helped spearhead the annual Elias Future Filmmaker Grants at Film Independent, which may be moving over to Vidiots now as part of their educational program. But that's a little bit down the road, so we'll keep you advised and apprised. Vidiots really is one of the last video stores around. It's the third in Pico in Santa Monica here in Los Angeles. They have a $55,000 title library that is absolutely amazing of Blu-rays, DVDs, and VHS tapes. VHS tapes, a lot of them, everybody thinks everything has gone on to DVD and Blu-ray. It hasn't. And that's one of the great things that Vidiots does is they actually are preserving a lot of these titles that have not found their way to conversion yet and may never. The big thing that they're now doing is reaching out beyond doing in-house screenings, and some of them are great. You know, you heard Theo Taplitz on our show not too long ago, and Theo stars in Ira Sachs' film Little Men. Theo and Ira were at Vidiots for a special screening. Every week there are more events going on. They truly are championing film preservation in various forms, and also educating and helping not only the video consumer, the film consumer, but on the educational front with young filmmakers. So it's going to be exciting to see how that plays out. So you can go to, as the PSA says, you can go to igg.me/at/Vidiots, or go to vidiotsfoundation.org, and you can see all the upcoming events, everything that's happening. I can't recommend it highly enough. You know, there's something else I want to kick out there today for all of our Last Ship fans, and I know there are many of you. One of the fan-run sites out there, Last Ship TV, has just kicked off a brand new website for The Last Ship. You can find it at lastship.tv. They're also on Twitter at Last Ship TV. Great bunch of guys who run this site, devoted to the franchise, devoted to the series. They've got new news announcements up there. They're going to be posting some interviews shortly. One with our friend Al Coronel, who was just here along with Emerson Brooks on the week after Labor Day. So take a look, check them out, lastship.tv. I think all the Last Ship fans are really going to like what they see and where the site is going with the information that the guys are imparting. So that's that. And now I think we have time to do one clip. You've heard me talk about Snowden. I'm a big fan of what Oliver Stone has done with Snowden. One of the great things, and he wrote the screenplay. But part of writing that screenplay, this isn't a standard screenplay with Edward Snowden involved. Because of pending charges under the Espionage Act, it's very constraining as to what you can tell, what you can't tell. Anytime you get legal things, pending legal matters involved, it kind of puts a damper on filmmakers. And in the case of Oliver Stone, we all know Oliver does not like to have dampers put on him. But not too long ago, I sat down, I got to ask Oliver about any constraints that were on him with the Espionage Act in writing and in visualizing Snowden. Here's what he had to say.
Oliver, I wanted to add the fascinating film. It's absolutely wonderful. And your story's construct, I love how you bookend it with pressure point early on, and then we get to the pressure point that's a defining point for Ed before he divulges. In light of the Espionage Act and the current charges that are pending, did you have your hands tied at all in constructing this story, and what you could and could not include and then visually also show?
Very good question, and certainly you have to analyze it, but I had admired political thrillers always and made some, and going back to the 70s, but the Manchurian Candidate in the 50s, I consider JFK a political thriller. So is Enemy of the State with 1999. Very, very impressed me. Of course, not realist, but impressed me. So did War Games. I love those films. but I think here I'm constrained by reality. And those realities, we could have pursued the Snowden. We had two books. We had the Russian fiction book, and we had the Guardian book. We could have pursued the fictional course. It would have been okay because he was in Russia. He could have been pursued by assassins, this, that, avoided it. Or he could have even, I thought at one point we could send him back to the United States and he could hide in the United States. That would be very clever. But, there's a lot of ways you can take the story. But we didn't, because we got to know him. I made three visits in the early part, from January to May of 2014, and that's where we agreed. After being wary of this story, I didn't want to get involved in something overly controversial that could backfire in my face. I'd already been involved in the My Lai massacre and the Martin Luther King movie, so I'd been kind of burned out, and I didn't want to get into a mess and not make a movie after a year of work again. So, anyway, I got involved, and he would tell us only certain things. He can't talk about other things. So, but he often suggested ways to do it and ideas. Very interesting young man. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
the constraints that we have.
And then following your visual constraints as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, the idea when Kieran Fitzgerald and I wrote the first draft was, let's stay with two storylines. Let's stick to Hong Kong, because that is a pressure point, as you say. Whether this thing would get published, this is a big deal to get published, because it was, the James Risen in 2004 had the story of mass eavesdropping, but the New York Times buried it for a year and a half because the White House asked them to. And it's a dirty story. But Snowden brought us the evidence, and you can't deny it. And it's so thick, this evidence. I mean, they've only released 90% of it or 10% of it, but I'm saying it's so thick that people don't even understand the implications of what he released. Not only is it about mass surveillance, not only illegal mass surveillance, unconstitutional mass surveillance, but it's also about cyber warfare. The whole Japan sequence is about that. And that is the most dangerous. It's like revealing the atomic bomb in 1945. This is the Nagasaki moment. And Hayden was boasting about it. Michael Hayden was boasting about it, if you remember, bragging about how he initiated the moment. And he didn't take credit because he didn't want to officially admit it, but he said he was so happy about Iran having problems with their centrifuges. Well, we unleashed the worm that continues to this day. This thing is very dangerous. It was not a successful operation. The Iranians got their centrifuges up within 6 months. The problem was that the worm didn't stop. It just kept going, and people picked up on, the U.S. is using cyber warfare. Now we're going to use it. So the world is much more dangerous as a result of our stupidity. And this is it's not in the Snowden. You have to read into it, but that's what Snowden was talking about, and in the movie too. This is a very dangerous game. Last week, we got hacked. The U.S. got hacked to the NSA, which means everything they stole from you, everything they know about you, is now known by whoever the it is who hacked the NSA. I love it. It's crazy time. They cannot provide with security. They cannot protect you. This is the thing most people don't know in the United States.
And that was the infamous Oliver Stone. And especially in light of last night's political debates, I think a lot of what Oliver was talking about when I spoke with him is extremely relevant today and relevant to us as a country, especially with what we've been hearing the past 48 hours or so. But right now, what we're going to hear from the wonderful effing friend, Quincy Rose.
Hey, Debbie, how you doing?
I'm fine, Quincy. How are you?
I'm doing okay. As I forewarned you, I have a little bit of a cold I'm battling, but I'm on the better side of it. But my voice sounds strange. But other than that, I'm doing all right. Happy to be on your show. Thanks for having me on again.
I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. Always. You know that. And but
it's such a pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, same here. I'm so excited because I got to see Friends Evan Friends just before you were starting out on the festival circuit.
That's right.
And as you were still promoting Miles to Go. And this one, I got a taste of it then, and we briefly talked about it before. But now, Friends Evan Friends, everybody can now get it.
That's right. It is, to do the plugging very fast, it is on iTunes for pre-order right now, which you can find those links by going to friendseffingfriendsmovie.com or to QUINCYRoseFilms.com. Either will find you and take you there. And you can pre-order it today, but it comes out tomorrow. It will be on iTunes, of course, as well as a multitude of other VOD platforms and cable VODs in the United States and Canada for now. And this is through Gravitas Ventures, which we're very excited about.
And Gravitas has proven to be a real friend to the indie filmmaker. I can't tell you how many, and I think you know because you listen to the show,
Yes.
how many filmmakers, these little independent films like yours, Michael last week, Gravitas is picking them up, giving a home to
That's right.
these films.
They're really a good... they have like a good business model for independent films, and they understood the VOD importance 10 years ago when they started, shortly before iTunes launched its online movie stuff going on. I think iTunes recently celebrated 10 years, and they started doing packages online, and Gravitas celebrated 10 years shortly before that. But I only mention that because, movies like ours, these independent films, while we might get a limited theatrical run like Michael David Lynch you're talking about with Dependence Day, which is such a great film, and is in Los Angeles right now in the Laemmles for a week, it's most likely for us that our films will live their majority of their lifetime on online, on VOD and streaming services. So, Gravitas kind of got that at the beginning, what they were trying to do, and have really expanded upon that. They do have theatrical releases as well.
They
but,
certainly do.
Yeah, but for films like my film, where it might do okay or it might not, but you have to weigh the benefit versus the cost. Mm-hmm. Really great company. They have a lot of interesting films that they get out in the world, a lot of really great indie films that I always enjoyed watching. And when you see that Gravitas sign in the beginning, you know that it's going to be an indie film worth checking out for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't end up loving the film, there was a reason they took it on, and you can usually see that.
Oh, very easily. And definitely with Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends, which I wanted it to have a distribution deal immediately when I saw it.
Yes,
because
you're such a champion.
And this is a film you really do want to see at home with a bunch of friends, rather than in a theater. Just because of the very nature of the film, which you're going to explain to everybody tactfully.
Yes. And I do agree. I think at home with a group of people. See, if you're like me, I like watching movies alone anyway because I don't like people bothering me. I don't want somebody chit-chatting or looking at their phone.
A man after my own heart.
Yeah. So. But that said, having seen it in several theaters because of our festival circuit run. I will say that when a group is laughing, it's contagious. So where you think, oh gosh, this is going to be a rough, watching or whatnot, then it can sometimes be, become a bigger or better thing just because of a group. So I would say at home and with a group, like you suggested. And the film, tactfully as I can be, is really what the title says, but to be more specific, it's about a group of friends who are, sleeping with each other and justifying their behaviors by some inside knowledge they have of the friend whom they're cheating on or cheating with. So essentially, each character knows that another character is doing something wrong, so they justify their own behavior. And also, it's about sex amongst friends and sex and love amongst friends and how the grass always seems to be greener on the other side and, getting carried away and kind of acting as if you were still a 17-year-old wild child instead of a, late 20s or early 30s, responsible, respectful adult in a relationship.
Well, and it's just... And the way that you tell the story and the way you interweave all of the characters, your primary characters, you've got Jacob, Steve, Sarah, Laura, Camille, and everybody intersects with everybody else. And it plays out like so many people that you know.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is as outlandish as it might seem at first, or if you start thinking about it, like people have the thing I hear the most is, "Wow, that's like my friends group," or went through that in my early 20s in college, or at some point experienced being one or both or all of the characters, and that was kind of the challenge to the film was. I didn't want anybody to be like a terrible character. There's one person in particular who kind of starts off the worst, and does he come around to being better? Who knows? I'll leave that up to the audience. But none of the people are bad people. They're making bad decisions at times, and that's kind of one of the themes I wanted to explore was the duality of within a person, that you could be a good person and make a bad decision. And get carried away in the moment or just not think things through all the way. And most of all, justify. Because you can justify so many things until you can't anymore. And basically that's what the film explores.
And in and of itself, just with the basic escapades that go on and, friends and the normal relationships among friends, there is so much humor in here, so different than your first film, Miles to Go, which opposite ends of the spectrum here, Quincy. And it's very easy in seeing Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends that the comedic gene did not fall too far away, from your dad.
Well, thank you. I take that as a huge compliment. And, it's funny because... you're right. Miles to Go was absolutely a drama. It definitely had comedic moments, as any drama should, so that we know the people that we're dealing with are not just walking around with their, just
yes.
in misery all the time. But it was a dramatic character study and had moments of comedy. But this is a comedy that has moments of drama or is a dramatic comedy, but. It was intended to be funny where there's extreme drama as opposed to just totally dramatic. However, Gillian Lee, who plays Laura and does such a fantastic job in this role because she has to be broken up the whole time, constantly, just falling apart, and her nerves and neuroses are just out there. She wears everything on her sleeve.
And she cries
and
so
it's
well.
tough role to play. And, so there's times where you actually feel for her and you're not laughing where I intended for it to be funny. But that's just a bonus because, she does such a wonderful job. It should be dramatic at times. And Tyler and Tyler Dawson, who plays Jacob, and Graham Skipper, who plays Steve, are just so funny together. And Christina Gooding, who plays Sarah, kind of balances everybody out, but she's not innocent. And that's one of the things I like about the film is nobody's purely innocent. And then Vanessa Dubasso, who rounds out the cast playing Camille, is just so funny. She's young and fresh, and she just the way she says things is so funny. So there's the whole balance through it. But it was intended to be comedy. So I'm that's always a huge compliment to say anything like that. It's even remotely. In line with something my father might have done.
And for those who are newcomers to the world of Quincy Rose, his father, the legendary Mickey Rose. And,
yes. Yeah.
And then, who palled around with some guy named Woody Allen?
Yeah, a little unknown filmmaker who never quite made it out of the 70s.
Yeah.
So my dad wrote Bananas and Take the Money and Run, as well as like What's Up, Tiger Lily, and a lot of Woody's. He co-wrote a lot of the comedy that Woody was doing prior to going into films. And and my dad also wrote for a lot of other stuff. If you're familiar with Bananas and Take the Money and Run, or even What's Up, Tiger Lily, you understand that abstract kind of humor he had, and just a really interesting thinker and very funny. Always accused of being very funny by funny people. So that's always a good thing.
So I want to ask you, Quincy, when you have a story like this, a script like this, you know you're going to be directing. How
Yes.
do you approach this visually? Because your visual tonal bandwidth is totally different than what you did in Miles to Go. And that's commendable because so many directors, they establish a visual format. A perfect example might be Woody Allen, because Woody is known for, here's a box. We're putting the cameras here. You guys do whatever you're going to do within this box. But you have very distinct, and you see that carried through films. Both of your films are shot completely differently in terms of tone and style.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you look at Woody's whole oeuvre of films, he's very different in a lot of them, and he's just consistent with wanting to tell a scene in a single take. And so, but if you get into a film like, Interiors is different than Husbands and Wives or something. And Husbands and Wives, he goes free and breaks everything. And in this film, I knew that this film just what was the word I'm thinking of? But the energy of it needed to be handheld. So it was just it's a character performance-based film, and it needed to feel like you were with these characters. Mm-hmm. So I knew we were going to be entirely handheld, and there's only 3 shots that are not, which we referred to as like the postcard shots while we were in there, and they're very specific shots chosen for specific reasons. And but the majority, the energy had to be moving, and when you go handheld and it's not locked down, if you have a slightly slower scene, but there's a little bit of motion on the camera, and not nauseating motion, but just a little movement, it helps the viewer watching not feel so stuck in what's going on. And I think with what Woody does, he's just kind of the master at making you think everything's the same, but it's not. And he's just so far along in like how to set a camera up in an area and have a scene play out in even a small space, but have it be very interesting. And a lot of those moments are kind of reflected in things I've done where I'm trying to do that. We even had a scene in Friends Effing Friends where there's 2 guys having a discussion in a apartment, and the camera stays, just basically still. Our DP, Howard Wexler, who's just fantastic and such a strong person because it's not easy to shoot handheld through a whole quick shoot like this, and he was able to offer us so many options in the visual aesthetic, as whether we wanted it a little shaky or dead still or just a little motion or extreme motion, whatever it was, different angles. And we got to play around with some of those ideas. But entirely handheld, so I knew that's already different than Miles to Go, which had some handheld, some Steadicam, and some lockdowns, like a more traditional style film, but not very traditional. But so it's just, I feel like it's just choosing what's right for each film. I'm not to ramble on, but I'm getting ready to shoot my next film starting tomorrow, actually, out here in New York. And at first I thought, this should be handheld because we're in New York, et cetera, and we're doing some walking and talking and all this stuff. But then as I thought about it longer, because of some very specific aesthetic things I'm choosing to do with this film, and that are very not experimental but unorthodox in the way I'm shooting it. And so I was talking it over with my DP, and it just occurred to me, I said, you know what, I think this one needs to be entirely on sticks, because what we're trying to do aesthetically with the city, it'll lend itself to just being still, making people have to look at what we're showing them instead of getting distracted by any movement of the camera, etc. Really putting the focus on what you're looking at and what are you listening to, and that's the whole point of this new one I'm doing. But with Friends Effing Friends, it was supposed to be fun and moving and, fast. It was supposed to feel fast and energetic, and hopefully we accomplished that.
Well, I definitely think you did. I mean, and you create a great intimacy also with the handheld so that it's very immersive when you're watching the film. You feel like you are in the room with these people. You are part of this group of friends.
Oh, great. That's what we were trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, it really plays so nicely, Quincy. Really well done. I mean,
Well, thank you so much. And it's always funny with a film like this because it's not going to be everybody's flavor. And so far, those are the kind of the films I like to make because the films I even enjoy going to see are the ones that kind of get a split across who loves it and who doesn't, whether or not you can debate if the filmmaker themselves are any good, but the film itself, sometimes you don't really care if a film was made great as long as you enjoyed the story. But, in this film, I think sometimes the subject matter rubs people the wrong way. And to me, that's interesting because it usually rubs them the wrong way because it feels real, not because it's just done poorly. And to me, that's a compliment. So I do know that it's not going to be everybody's favorite, but I kind of get a little kick out of that as long as they're just not, ambivalent about their feelings on the film. But because, as an artist, we're always looking for a reaction. But I have been very handed many compliments just in relation to the sense that the dialogue is realistic. People feel like these characters are real and people they've experienced or been in the past. And so I'm really excited for it to get out there, and let people watch it and cringe and laugh. And like you said, in a group, have a little wine. If you have glaucoma, have some marijuana. That medical stuff people enjoy, and but only if it's medicinal.
That's right.
And and just kind of go for the ride, but make sure you're in a healthy place in your relationship, or that none of this has come up recently, or else you might be in for a little bit of an argument afterwards.
Yeah, no. Healthy relationship people only, or extreme singles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, my friend,
yes,
I was going to say, I mean, I have Dave Hartman on the other line now, holding to follow up.
Oh, amazing!
To follow up you, I used Oliver Stone as an opener to you, and now you got Phantasm Ravager coming after you.
So cool! And I looked up his trailer. That trailer looks fantastic. I haven't seen the film. I'm not 100% familiar, but that film, the trailer looks incredible. I was like, "What is this? When was this made?" It's amazing.
I think you'd really like Phantasm Ravager.
Oh, I'm going to check it out for sure. And I think Graham Skipper, who's in my film, is aware of it because he's big in the.
And Graham,
I don't want to call it just horror world, but horror and sci-fi.
But Graham is he's in the film Beyond the Gates, that is a fabulous horror film.
Yeah, he's in Beyond the Gates. He's also in Almost Human and something else that just came out, Mind's Eye, which is doing quite well. Mind's Eye.
And of course
thank you so much for having me on, and I hope everybody checks out the film. It comes out tomorrow on VOD, and it'll be everywhere.
They sure as heck better, and you better come back on the show again.
I will indeed. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Debbie.
A joy, Quincy. And I will talk to you soon.
Okay, you too. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was the fabulous Quincy Rose, Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends, on iTunes tomorrow. Available on VOD and digital. And now, it is a great thrill to have the wonderful David Hartman. Hello, David.
Hey, Debbie. How are you?
Well, I am so thrilled to get to spend another week showing love to Phantasm. I mean, this is such a treat. I was following the Beyond Fest, everything that was happening down at the Egyptian last week. Mm-hmm. The fans are loving Ravager.
It's pretty crazy.
They are loving Ravager, and I can't blame them.
I've been a fan of this series ever since I was a little kid, so, it's kind of a dream come true. I haven't even got to feel like I've been making a Phantasm film. We've been working so hard for so long. It's just now that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm worked on a Phantasm film.
But yours is an interesting story as to how you got to work on this film, because like you said, you grew up watching Phantasm films.
Absolutely.
And as a kid, you watched them, and now here you are after years in animation doing, okay, I have to say it again, Tigger and Winnie the Pooh. I mean, you go from Tigger and Winnie the Pooh, Transformers, Astro Boy reboot, which as much as I loved the Astro Boy reboot, it doesn't. The original Japanese from the 50s was just
Oh, absolutely.
nothing tops that. That was always my favorite. That was actually the theme of our play in second grade. I still remember that. Yes. But tell us the story about how you became, because for Don to pass this franchise off into your hands to direct, this has been his baby for 30 plus years now.
It's pretty daunting to even think about. He's had options to do other stuff, and he's always, kept this close to his heart. This is his baby. I met Don through a friend of a friend kind of thing, and ended up helping on Bubba Hotep.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up doing some of the effects work and some artwork on it, stuff like that. And he gave me like a visual effects supervisor credit, and it was fantastic. And that was a dream come true, just getting to work with Don. But we stayed friends after that, and I helped him on Showtime Masters of Horror, doing storyboards and stuff like that. But I would shoot like little short films every weekend. I just love filming. I just love telling stories. So I would just do this, and I would just like bombard his inbox with these little stupid videos I'm doing, whether they were comedy or straight horror or what. And one day, Don and I were talking on the phone, and it was just like, hey, why don't we go out and shoot something this weekend just for fun? There's no executives. There's no, if you don't like it, you don't have to show it to anybody, basically. But let's just go have fun and, practice some different camera moves and experiment. And Don's like, hey, that's great. Why don't we get Reggie involved and do a Phantasm thing? And we're like, oh, cool. And in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, Don's going to direct this. I'm going to go watch the master at work. I'll set up lights and stuff like that. So I was just super excited. So I kept pushing this thing to happen. And, we start going, and we're getting ready to, go out and shoot. And Don's like, oh, by the way, you're directing, right? And I'm like, what? And he's like, no, it's your problem now. You came up with this idea. You're directing. So we did this short, which ended up in the film. It was a scene with Reggie in the cabin, meeting a girl, kind of derivative of normal Reggie actions. And so we shot this thing, and Don was like, hey, this came out really good. Why don't we shoot another one? So we go out, like, another weekend or two, and we shoot another scene. And he's like, hey, this is a lot of fun. So we keep going. But we took 2 years off after that. Don went to do John Dies at the End. Which
you also did an animated sequence on.
Yes, yeah. And I got a cameo in it, too. I die in the pit
by
the spiders. And also got to design the meat monster and do its voice. So,
the meat monster in John Dies at the End is so cool.
Yeah, so I got to do his voice. That was so much fun. And I went to go work on this Transformers Prime show. And, so 2 years later, where we're both kind of comfortable where we are again, we're like, hey, what are we going to do with all that footage? Are we going to put it on a DVD or whatever? Let's do a web series or something. And Don's like, you know what? I've been thinking about it. We're going to make part 5. And I'm all like, yes, finally, Don's going to make part 5. And he's like, you're directing. And I'm just like, what? And, part of me is like, no, Don, you should direct this. This is your baby. And then the other half of me is like, hey, stupid, you got an opportunity here. But seriously, Don, immediately we went to work. The next day, Don and I are fleshing out the script and planning our next shoots. And from there, it was just hardcore jumping in work. And I haven't even really had much time to reflect on it.
Mm-hmm.
We just jumped in. But that's really how I got into this. I already directed a quarter of the movie and didn't know it.
Well, something I find that I love about Ravager is that this is a very complex story. It's a very ambitiously told story to wrap up the franchise as it now stands.
Yeah.
really delving into evil, delving into reality, and interpretations of realities. Plus, you got practical effects versus digital effects, ambitious on so many levels. And then, of course, you guys didn't know it at the time, but this has turned out to be a very poignant film as well,
Yes. Yes.
with the passing of Angus Scrimm. So, did you? What was it like working with Don in developing this script, with the ambition and all the complexity to it?
I mean, it came for us very natural. I mean, we already had some scenes shot. So the idea came from how are we going to use this footage that we've shot and work it into a story that's just not a guy walking around, which was essentially what the web series kind of was. It was going to be called Reggie Tales, and it was going to follow him and his adventures, and it was just going to be kind of a monster of the week kind of thing. But when we got into this, Don and I were really diving into, what we loved about the first film and the sequels. And, for me, the first film was always about a kid and his innocence. And he's dealing with the, death of his parents and then possibly his brother, or, we don't really know at the end. And, the film basically is made up of these little vignetted scenes and this slightly different editing style, and I really loved it, and it made it unsettling. And so Don and I were talking, in the second film, the third film, the fourth film, these characters have kind of lost some of their innocence in that they've seen a lot, and, Don and I were talking, like, let's not hide the fact that the characters have aged. It's been too long. Everyone looks older. We should grasp that and run with it. And we've all know somebody or have dealt with somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia, and I had a family member with it, and, they would say some weird stuff, and it just kind of made sense to bring that innocence back in, with a character dealing with this and Alzheimer's, and, or is their mind in a different dimension, but their body's here, is their consciousness somewhere else, and what they're saying is actually what they're seeing. Who knows, but it got really deep.
Well, it really
for
does.
Don and I, and that's why we throw in guns and giant spheres attacking the cities. We still wanted some of that fun macho stuff in there. But
and you also create this great ambiguity, because this is essentially Reggie's journey.
Yeah.
This is really Reggie's story as he goes in and out of these various realities promulgated by the tall man. But we never know, is he really, are we doing the time travel, the reality travel? Are we tessering between different dimensions? Or is all of this in his mind? And you never really you never tell us. You leave it to everybody's imagination.
Absolutely. And there's little, if you really dive into what the characters are saying, there's little clues. But, Don and I, when we wrote this, Phantasm's always had more questions than answers. And, we wanted to keep that. There, you can't really take Phantasm and give a definitive ending.
Right.
When we set out to start this, we never planned on this actually being the last film. That's kind of come naturally, with the passing of Angus and just how long the film took to create. But, with the ambiguity and all that, it's part of Phantasm for me was staying up late at night with friends after watching a Phantasm film, and we would discuss what it meant to us. And everybody had different perceptions of what it meant based on their own experiences. And, Don and I wanted to have that. So even though I have a perception in my mind of what's actually happening, what I think the ending is, it's been a lot of fun reading online, seeing what other people's interpretations are. And there's even interpretations where I'm like, whoa, I didn't think of that. That's actually really a strong theory. And then there's other ones, where I'm like, nah, you're way off. But there's a lot of clues there to help you come to a conclusion.
And there are a lot of clues through your visuals as well. This is it's a visually dynamic film. One thing that
Oh,
you do
thank you.
keep, the one thing you do keep the same is you do keep the silver sphere ball, plowing into everybody's head with a, that stays the same. But then, whereas Don, when the franchise started out, he was making great use of negative space to create a sense of foreboding and unknown. With this one, you really open it up. We've come full circle through the circle of life, Reggie's story, and now we've got a lot of more wide open spaces, desolation, or vibrancy.
Yes.
How important, what kind of conversations did you have with yourself as you were designing the visual look of Ravager?
Well, I mean, we kind of play with this in the film, like lightness and darkness. We have, not to give spoilers, but, scenes with Angus, we have him in a white space and then a dark space. And, it's that contrast. And in the film, the original Phantasm, there is a lot of black and a lot of negative space. And, Don and I were talking, some of it's out of necessity of doing a low-budget film, and it's much easier to shoot during the day than at night.
Sure.
Certainly that played into it at some point. But, for me, it was like Reggie in the desert in these vast one-point perspective type shots. But lighting, we never seen these villains really in the daytime. It's always been in the mausoleum and at night. Don are like, what if we actually saw these spheres going, running throughout the day? And to me, that also implies that they're more in control now. They've come out of the darkness and they're more around us, and they're not hiding. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but it definitely played into it, and definitely color plays into it. I'm an illustrator first before I've been directing, and I really like vibrant, almost garish colors and how they work, and some of the emotions you can get out of those colors.
No, you do a beautiful job with the colors, and even in various sequences where we'll find Reggie in a hospital and you've got like a sickly green on the wall, not a cheery hospital room at all, but one with great light coming through, very thin chiffon curtains. There you pay attention to every little detail in your visual palette here.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I storyboard every single shot, being an illustrator. You compose the shots. Even, we got handheld shots and we got shots on sticks and stuff. But, every shot is composed. And, it's kind of weird to think about it. Actually, this morning I was just going through a bunch of papers and found like, hey, here's the car sequence, the storyboards. And, they're just a mess in my office. But it's fun to look at because it's like setting up the camera and block everything. I set up where I would like the lights. I have it all on paper first, and it's really just out of if I make myself sick from being so stressed about shooting that the crew can go on without me and get the shots that I desire if I'm throwing up somewhere. Luckily that hasn't happened, but I just like to be that prepared. Really, if I get everything that's on paper, I know I have enough to tell a story, and then it frees my mind up to be a little more creative on set. Instead of trying to fix problems, I'm able to think creatively on new shots or take advantage of an opportunity that comes up.
Well, since you brought it up, David, I have to go there. The CUDA car, the Barracuda, this car, it has survived, through all the phantasms, and now this is one souped up car.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is gorgeous. What were your considerations for all the bells and whistles? And who actually did build the car? Was it Bob? Did Bob Ivy build it, or was he just driving?
No, it was my wife.
All right, talk.
She is the handyman of my family. It's really funny. The theme itself came from Roger Avery, from Oscar winner for Pulp Fiction. He wrote a script a long while ago, and that was an element in there Don absolutely loved, and I think it was called the Battle Cuda. You know, and we were like, oh, we always going to have this kind of Mad Max version of this muscle car. So Dawn, you know, was like, see what you can do, and my wife builds props and stuff like that, and she loves doing these kind of projects. So Dawn brings the car over, and it's like in my garage for like 2 months while my wife's building these armor plates and putting Gatling guns on. It's like, you know, I did a little design of what I would like, and then she takes it and amplifies it. But I got to tell you, as a fan of the series, I would run out at night and sit in the car, and like a little kid. I'm just sitting there, you know, acting like I'm driving this thing. It was so cool.
Oh, it is so cool when you see this on screen, and with a lot of the camera angles that you use to depict the car. Absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Just so much fun.
Well, you got to use those wide lenses, you know, and get the air intakes on the car, and, you know, those kind of things. That was a lot of fun.
You were like a kid in a candy store with this one.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and like I said, you know, we started as a web series, so we could really plan out these scenes as little vignettes. So, you know, you always had a light at the end of the tunnel with each of these scenes, because it's like, oh, I do this scene and then we're done. It wasn't until we became, you know, full-featured film that we really delved into the story aspect, which was a lot of the kind of the park scenes with an aged Reggie and Michael Baldwin.
Mm-hmm. How exciting was it for you, being a fan, having grown up on the Phantasm series, to actually get to now work with all of the original characters, with Reggie Bannister, with Michael Baldwin, with Our Lady in Lavender, Cat Lester, with beloved Angus. And then, of course, we get two characters who come back into this one that we haven't seen. We've got Stephen Jutras is here as Chunky, and he is just adorable and just a kick in the butt. And then Gloria Lynn Henry as Rocky, she's now brought back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dream come true. But it's funny, you know, I have to separate my brain. I'm able to turn off my fanboy and go into director mode, you know, where I can't geek out too much on set and lose control. But, you know, behind closed doors, I'm just like, oh, my gosh, I'm getting to work with these people. And now they're friends. You know, I was so excited to get Michael Baldwin and Bill Thornberry in there. You know, I met Reggie a few times, and we were working on these short films together. But it really felt like a phantasm when we get the other guys in. And then, of course, Angus Scrimm came on, and, you know, I was scared to death to meet Angus. And we met at a cheesecake factory. It was me, Don, and Angus to go over some of the lines we wrote. Just because I really wanted Angus's blessing on this. If he was not happy or didn't want to do it or something, to me the whole project falls apart. He has to be a part of it, and he has to give his blessing. And he read the lines, and he looked at me and was like, "This is exactly what the tall man would say," you know. And I'm just like tearing up at the restaurant. You know, it was fantastic. He was a great man to work with, and he really loved the story. And I did get to show the movie to him before he passed. Once we knew he was sick, the movie's about wrapped up, and we did a special screening just for him. I picked him up. If you have a minute, I'll tell you the story.
Yes.
I picked him up at his house to go to the screening, and he was like, you know, in this, you know, classic tall man voice. He's just like, "David, who's going to drive me home tonight?" And I was like, "Well, Angus, if you love the movie, I'll drive you home. If you hate the movie, Don's going to drive you home." I wouldn't be able to take that if he hated it. Emotionally. And so we watched the movie, and he's just got this straight face, not showing any emotion while watching it. And I'm just sweating bullets, you know, sitting there and white-knuckling my fists. And after the movie, he comes up and to me, he's like, "David, you will be driving me home." And that was just the greatest feeling. And we had a very deep conversation where the film inspired him to talk about his own mortality. On the drive home, for a good hour, we're talking about life and death. And, now watching these scenes with Angus in there, they become very poignant to me and are actually really hard to watch, just based on these other experiences.
Mm-hmm. No, well, I just think it's a fabulous film. If you are fans of the Phantasm franchise, this is a must-see. It's even a good first film to see because it'll make you want to go back and see the other ones. And it's in theaters right now. Yes?
Yes. Yep.
And also available...
iTunes, Amazon, Video on Demand, DirecTV. I think it's on almost all platforms, which is great.
As well it should be.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Oh.
It means a lot.
Now, will you be directing another live action, or are you going back to animation?
You know what? I've always loved live action. That's always been my dream. But I'm an illustrator, and I was able to get into the business quickly with animation, and then animation's been so good to me, and I've fallen in love with it. So I'm still working on a Transformers show right now, but I'm definitely looking for the next project. And, would love to get a bigger budget.
Well, David, I can't thank you enough for joining me today on Behind the Lens.
Thank you.
This
has been fun.
I
love talking this stuff.
and I will. Well, I'm going to have you back on the show to talk more about animation.
No, sure. I would love to.
David, thank you so much, and we will be in touch soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye. And that was the fabulous David Hartman, co-writer and director of Phantasm Ravager. And, okay, we only have 20 seconds left of the show today. It went by fast. So thank you to Quincy Rose. Thank you to David Hartman. Next week, we're going to have Mary Bonney with us and Dory Barton talking girl flu. So until then, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.